The fight has been talked about for months, and it looks like on October 21st it's finally going to happen. Arguably the best troll currently operating in the UFC against the most reckless, figuratively if not literally testosterone pumped fighter in the UFC. When you put the personalities like that, you could think that potentially Costa could troll Chimaev into fighting a reckless fight. When you look at what each guy does well and does poorly, it's not a stretch to think that Costa is a bad matchup for Chimaev. The question is, with Chimaev still being something of an unknown commodity, is he just way better than Paulo Costa to the point where the unfavourable clash of styles is irrelevant? To get into what each guy does well and does poorly in a bit more detail, for me there is a sense of class in Khamzat Chimaev's wrestling that isn't present in any aspect of Paulo Costa's game. That said, he does occasionally do unnecessary flex moves. For instance, lifting when he could finish a takedown by driving. Also pausing to talk trash when he had Li Jiangliang in the air. He got away with it on that occasion, but considering the way he gassed against Gilbert Burns, this kind of showmanship will get him in trouble if he doesn't cut it out in the future. On the ground, Chimaev is officially a purple belt. Some people are taking the fact that he's a purple belt who has submitted two black belts in Kevin Holland and Li Jingliang as in some way an indictment of modern BJJ. If you look at how the fights played out, Li Jingliang tried to stand back up giving his back away, which is a scenario where wrestling and BJJ intersect. Kevin Holland was submitted from the all-fours position, which is a common position in wrestling because that's where you end up after failed shots. I reckon if you saw Chimaev in purer BJJ focused scenarios, such as trying to reclaim guard from a dominant position, or trying to pass guard near the centre of the octagon, then I expect he would perform on belt rank. I think it's worth pointing out that Chimaev does have extremely strong squeeze, at least in the early stages of fights. In 4 submission victories, he has choked his opponent unconscious in 3 out of those 4 occasions in MMA. Chimaev has been an effective striker in both his pre-UFC fights and in the UFC. Despite this, he has been known to take reckless swings which could potentially lead to him gassing out. When you see him on the Thai pads, he doesn't look hugely impressive. On the whole, whilst Chimaev's wrestling might be the strongest asset in this fight, his skills at kicking range are probably the weakest compared to the all-rounder Costa. Turning the attention to Costa, the funny thing about Paulo Costa is that despite him having a lot of victories by TKO, he rarely shows moments of flash on the feet. By a moment of flash, I would think of something like this KO by Conor McGregor in Cage Warriors, or perhaps this KO by Vitor Belfort. If you look at Costa's victories over Uriah Hall or Johnny Hendricks for instance, there weren't that many well-timed strikes by Costa. Rather, they were attritional fights where both guys wilted under Costa's pressure. Realistically, it was also Costa's pressure that earned him the decision against Yoel Romero. So, to describe Costa's approach on the feet, it would be realistic to describe it as a hands-up, no-nonsense, battering ram style approach. The issue Costa may have in terms of a ceiling in the UFC is that even though he's won a lot of fights so far by wanting it more and being a tough guy, his endurance hasn't looked that great in the process. If you look at the circumstances around some of his opponents, Johnny Hendricks was fighting out of his weight class. Uriah Hall has said he was going through depression. Luke Rockhold had been inactive and said he was self-medicating with mushrooms on a daily basis. To pick out some of the things Costa does well on the feet, he's good at cutting off the ring and he also has a good right roundhouse kick offensively. Looking at his wider MMA game, his takedown defense is good and seems better than his wrestling offense, which suits him in this fight. He's also good on the ground, which he showed when he temporarily got the mount on Luke Rockhold. Costa has also been known to get back up off the ground, though he did give his back away, doing this at least once against Marvin Vettori. So in terms of a prototype of a fighter to beat Chimaev, I don't think Costa is far off, but he might have some limitations that will be problematic in this fight. Costa is the better kicker and can win a fight at long range. In terms of defending shots, the game plan will obviously be to sprawl. It may also be wise for Costa to fight off the back foot to try to keep Khamzat out of shooting range. There may also be strategies that may work specific to Chimaev, but these presume you have a cardio advantage. If you look at some of the positions Li Jingliang found himself in against Chimaev, rather than trying to stand, I think it would have been a better strategy to roll to his back and shrimp to half guard, than to try to tie Chimaev up with overhooks. This strategy may have conceded some points and maybe the round, but the idea is to weather a storm. Another tactical decision that might be effective against Chimaev is, if taken down, to use more BJJ style stand-ups rather than to get back to your feet in a more wrestling style. In conclusion, I think that Chimaev is probably going to win, as I think he will be persistent enough in the takedown attempts to score enough points and eventually either TKO Paulo Costa or win a decision. Let me know in the comments how you see this one going yourself.